Today's video is all about chicken. And I have quite a few recipes I've made over the past year that we've just really enjoyed. So I thought I'd share them again, just in case you missed any of them. Hey y'all, I'm Valerie, and welcome to my kitchen. In today's video, I'm sharing 6 delicious chicken recipes. These turned out to be some of our favorites, and I hope you love them too. Okay y'all, let's get started. You're gonna love this smoked sausage and chicken, Cajun, Alfredo, Pierogi casserole. That was a mouthful. I'm using a 14-ounce package of smoked sausage, and I chopped those up into small bite-sized pieces. I've got them in a large skillet over medium heat, and I'm just sauteing them for about 5 minutes, just until they start to get brown. You just want to get a little bit of color on there. But if you want to totally skip this step, that will be fine too. Now I'm heading over to the counter. You'll need a pretty big bowl. We gotta have enough room to stir everything around. You'll need 2 jars of your favorite Alfredo sauce. Just go ahead and add in both of those jars. And I'm not wasting any of that sauce. So I added a little bit of water to each of those jars, shook it up real good, and then added that in. Okay, let's talk about this Cajun seasoning. I'm using the Slap Ya Mama, and the recipe calls for 2 to 3 tablespoons. But to be on the safe side, I did about 1.5 tablespoons, and that was plenty. And for the cheese, I did a handful of Parmesan and about a cup of shredded mozzarella. You're going to need a 32-ounce package of frozen cheese pierogies, and I'm just using the classic cheddar. And you're just going to add them right on into that Alfredo sauce mixture. And just stir that around until everything is completely coated in that sauce. Next, you're going to add in 2.5 cups of cooked chicken. I shredded mine, but if you want to dice it up, that'll work fine too. And then you can go ahead and add in that smoked sausage that we browned up a little bit ago. And this is why I said you would need a large bowl. Just try your best to stir it all together. And I ended up switching to the tongs and just tossing it all around. It was a lot easier this way than trying to use that spoon. And now we're ready to pour this in the casserole dish. I'm using a 9x13. And I did spray mine with nonstick spray. And y'all, this bowl was a chunk of lead. It's a glass bowl and it's already heavy when it's empty. At least I got it all in there without making a huge mess. Now just try to make sure you spread it out into an even layer. The recipe called for 1 cup of grated Parmesan cheese, but I just used about a handful of that, and then I added 1 cup of shredded mozzarella. But you can even use cheddar on here if you want to. Now this goes into the oven to bake at 375, uncovered, for 35 to 45 minutes. This turned out so good. I made this to take up to my sister, and they loved it. I've had a chicken pierogi casserole before, and it was delicious. But the smoked sausage and Cajun seasoning made this one even better. I definitely need to cook with pierogis more often. If I'd have had it together and planned a little better, I could have served it with some Mexican street corn. That is always a hit. But I did not. Maybe next time, because I will be making this again. I think you're going to love this one. It's a Mexican chicken and rice. I've got about 1.5 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken here that I've cut into bite-sized pieces. Now you can wait if you want and add this to the chicken after you add the chicken to the pan, but since I already had the chicken in the bowl, I went ahead and added it. Either way, you're going to sprinkle that chicken with 1 packet of taco seasoning. And I did stir that around to get everything coated. Now over to the stove top, in a large pan, I added about a tablespoon of oil and all of that chicken. Now you're just going to spread it all out into an even layer, that way everything cooks evenly. I'll let it cook on that side for a few minutes, then I flipped everything over and let it continue to cook until all that chicken was completely cooked through. Now you're going to remove it to a separate plate and set it aside. And make sure you don't clean out that pan, just leave it like it is. Gives it a little extra flavor. Next, you're going to add in 1 cup of instant rice. And the recipe called for 1 cup of thin salsa. So since mine was the thick and chunky kind, I added in a splash of water to thin it out a little bit. Now you're going to pour in 1 cup of milk, then give that a really good stir. I'll let that come to a simmer, and then you're going to cover it and let it continue to simmer for 5 to 7 minutes. And I did stir it a couple times just to make sure that rice didn't stick to the bottom. And when that's done and that rice is tender, I gave it a little stir before I added in the rest. Now you're going to add 1 can of diced tomatoes with green chilies and 1 cup of queso cheese dip. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up, maybe share it with a friend, and hit that subscribe button. That way you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Okay, after I got that all mixed in, I'll let it continue to simmer for about 5 more minutes. I stirred it one last time, then I sprinkled over a half a cup of shredded cheese. Now we're adding in that cooked chicken from earlier. I just spread that out a little, and you can probably guess what's coming next. More cheese. About another half of a cup. And if you're not big on cheese, you can definitely leave it out and it'll still be delicious. Then I covered it and let it continue to cook until that cheese was melted. And y'all, this was so good. This had so much flavor. The combination of the salsa with the taco seasoning and the rotel and the queso. All I've got to say is this is one dinner you have got to try. I topped mine with some sour cream, and I love that this took less than 30 minutes to make. This French onion chicken hash brown casserole turned out to be a family favorite. In a very large bowl, make sure it's a big one now. You're going to add in 1.5 cups of French onion dip. This stuff is so good, and I got a little carried away here and added too much, so I had to take some back out of there. Next, you're going to add in 1 can of cream of chicken soup. And for the seasonings, I added 1 teaspoon each of paprika, garlic powder, and parsley, and also half a teaspoon of pepper. I'm just giving that a quick stir before I add in the rest. And by the way, if you're enjoying this easy recipe, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up. It really does help out my channel. And that was 3 cups of the cooked shredded chicken I added in there, along with 3 cups of shredded cheese. And for the hash browns, I'm using the shredded. The recipe called for a 30-ounce bag, but all I had was a 26-ounce bag, and it still turned out perfect. And I did let them sit out on the counter for about 15 minutes before I used them, just so they wasn't frozen solid. Also, it's easier to stir if you add half the bag, then mix it, then add in the rest. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to get it all well combined. Oh, and while I'm thinking about it, if you're new here, I always have the recipe linked or typed out in my description box below the video. That way you don't have to try to write it down as I go. I got that all mixed up. I'm grabbing a 9x13 casserole dish and I'm pouring it all in. I started out trying to spoon it in and then I just ended up dumping it all. Either way, as long as you get it in there and kind of spread it out a little bit. Now you're going to sprinkle over a 6-ounce bag of the crispy French fried onions. And y'all just kind of have to use your own judgment here as far as how many of these things to add. I'm picking out a burnt one there. I felt like the whole bag would have been a lot, so I ended up only adding about 3/4 of that. And if you don't like French fried onions, you could always do Ritz crackers or potato chips or even cornflakes. Now I'm topping all that with a cup of shredded cheese. And I'm just using a combination of cheddar and mozzarella. Now this goes into the oven to bake at 350 for about 35 minutes. And y'all, this was so good. I kind of figured it would be good with the French onion dip because we just love that stuff, but it was really delicious. I love how easy it was to put together, and I just kept it simple and served it with green beans. Do you have a go-to side dish you make pretty regular? My family loves the green beans, steamed broccoli, or buttered corn. You've got to make this next one. It's a Tuscan Chicken Mac Cheese. I used 2 chicken breasts for this, and I just cut them into 1-inch strips, kind of like tenders. I added those to the pan along with a tablespoon of oil. I spread those out into an even layer, then I seasoned them with paprika, parsley, Italian seasoning, and some nature's seasoning. I get that at Walmart. It's just an all-purpose seasoning, but if you don't have that, you can use salt, pepper, and garlic powder. I let them cook for a few minutes, then flipped them over and seasoned the other side. I just did a little of the same seasonings I used before. And right quick, if you're enjoying this video, it would really help me out if you gave me a thumbs up and maybe even shared it with a friend. And hit that subscribe button, that way you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Okay, back to the recipe. When that chicken is completely cooked through, I removed it to a separate plate, then set it aside. Now to that same pan, I added a couple tablespoons of butter and 1 small diced onion. Just let that saute for a few minutes until the onion is tender. Next, you're going to add in about 3 teaspoons of minced garlic. Then stir that around and let it cook for about 30 seconds or so, just until that garlic becomes fragrant. Now you're going to add in 1/3 cup of chicken broth. Just stir that and let it simmer for about 5 minutes or until that starts to reduce down. The recipe called for a 9-ounce jar of sun-dried tomatoes and 2 tablespoons of oil from the jar, but that just seemed like a lot of sun-dried tomatoes to me, so I only added in 1/3 cup. I did cut mine into small pieces. Whisk that and let it cook for a couple minutes so it can release some of that flavor. Now sprinkle in 3 tablespoons of flour, whisk and let that cook for a couple more minutes. And I know y'all, this is a lot of whisking, but trust me, it is worth it. When that flour is cooked in and you don't see any more dry spots, you can go ahead and add in 2 cups of chicken broth, along with 2.5 cups of milk. The recipe calls for 3 cups of milk total, but I'm saving this 1/2 cup to use at the end if I need it. I'm also adding some salt and pepper to taste and a couple teaspoons of Italian seasoning. Now whisk that, and then you're going to bring this mixture to a simmer. And next, you're going to add in 3 cups of uncooked macaroni noodles. Then you're going to reduce the heat to a medium-low and let it cook for about 9 or 10 minutes or until that sauce thickens and that macaroni is cooked to al dente. Make sure to stir it pretty regularly just to make sure those noodles don't stick to the bottom. Now you can add in a few cups of baby spinach and stir this until it's wilted. I could have probably added a little more because this stuff cooks down and it don't even look like you hardly put anything in there. Then I removed it from the heat. Now it's time to add in the cheese. I added 3/4 cup of mozzarella cheese and 1/2 cup of cheddar cheese. Oh, and a pretty big handful of shredded Parmesan cheese. Now stir that until that cheese is completely melted. And this is where, if you feel like it needs a little more liquid, you can go ahead and add in the rest of that milk. I felt like mine needed it, so that's what I did. It just depends on how creamy you like your mac and cheese. And when you get it how you want it, you can add in that cooked chicken. Stir that up, and then this dinner is ready to serve. And y'all, this recipe was absolutely amazing. The flavor was out of this world. We all loved it, and I will definitely be making this again. I really hope you try this one, and I can pretty much guarantee your family will be impressed. I make these 5-ingredient chicken roll-ups pretty regularly these days. I started out by adding 1.5 cups of cooked shredded chicken to a medium-sized bowl. I also added in 1/2 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. You can use any cheese you like here. And for seasonings, I used a little of this Kinder's garlic and herb seasoning. If you don't have that, it's okay. You can just use some salt, pepper, and garlic powder. I stirred that around and got everything good and mixed together. Then I set that to the side for just a bit while I make up a quick sauce for these roll-ups. So to do that, I'm just using my large mixing cup. I added in 1 can of cream of chicken soup, along with 1/2 cup of milk. And I just used 2% here. Now stir that until it's well combined. Now it's time to put these roll-ups together. I'm using an 8-ounce can of the regular size crescent rolls. There's a total of 8 crescents in here. Now I'm just unrolling that dough and pulling apart those triangles. I'm going to work on these 1 crescent roll at a time, and I'm just pulling them apart a tiny bit just so I can fit more of that filling in there. But before I roll these up, I'm going to add a little bit, maybe like 1/4 cup of that cream of chicken soup and milk mixture into that shredded chicken and cheese. This just helps for that filling to stick together a little better. You kind of have to eyeball this part, but I put about 1/8 of that mixture onto each crescent roll. Then I just folded those corners over to kind of cover it up a little and then rolled it up. And there you have it, a nice little chicken roll-up. These don't have to be perfect, but I'm going to show you one more time how to do it. Just lay out your triangle, put some of that chicken mixture on top, and then roll it up. Now repeat that until you've used up all your crescent rolls. I'm using a 9x9 inch baking dish for this, or you can use an 8x8. I did spray it with nonstick spray. Now I'm just placing in those rolls. Now you're going to take that cream of chicken soup and milk mixture and pour it evenly over the top. And you can totally skip this part, but I'm topping mine with about 1/2 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. I did sprinkle the top with a little parsley just for a little color. Now these go into the oven to bake at 350 for about 25 to 30 minutes until this gets bubbly and that top is golden brown. These are really easy and simple to make, but absolutely delicious. I did drizzle a little more of that sauce on the top of these and served it with some green beans. My mama was actually over this night, and she says that this is one of her new favorite recipes. My whole family loves it, and I think yours will too. I'm finally getting around to this Tik Tok Chicken Cobbler. I've got a 9 by 13 inch baking dish here. I'm adding 1 stick of butter, then I'm putting that in the oven to melt. Then while that's melting, in a large measuring cup, I've got 2 cups of milk. And to that, I'm adding this whole box of Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuit mix. It's an 11.36 ounce box, and don't forget to add in that seasoning packet. Now stir that up and then set it to the side. I've got my baking dish out of the oven. That butter is completely melted, so now I'm going to add in a little over 3 cups of cooked shredded chicken. You could also use chopped chicken here, just make sure it's cooked, and you'll want to spread that out into an even layer. I decided to sprinkle on a little nature seasoning, Italian seasoning, and garlic powder. Just season it how you like it. The recipe called for a 12-ounce bag of frozen peas and carrots, or vegetables of your choice. We prefer the canned over the frozen kind, so I added in a small can of drained peas and carrots and a can of drained green beans. Just sprinkle those evenly over that chicken. Now on top of that, you're going to drizzle over that milk and biscuit mixture. And you might feel the need to stir this all together, but don't. Just trust the process. I'm going to make up one more mixture, so to that same measuring cup, I added 1 can of cream of chicken soup. And y'all, this stuff never wants to come out good for me. I hear people talking about having trouble opening the packs of cream cheese, but for me, it's these cream of chicken soups. I mean, I can open the can, but I just wish it would all just slide right on out. So to that cream of chicken soup, I'm also adding in 2 cups of chicken broth. Just give that a really good whisk and make sure it's very well combined. Now you're going to pour that mixture right on top. And don't forget, you're not going to stir it. If you make this, it does look really liquidy at this point, but don't let that scare you. That's exactly how it's supposed to be. Now this goes into the oven to bake at 350, uncovered, for 45 minutes. When it comes out of the oven, it'll still be a little jiggly in the center, but that's okay because after it sits for about 15 minutes, it does thicken up. This was so easy to make and my family loved it. I also wanted to say a big thank you to each and every one of you. Never in a million years did I think I would have this many of y'all want to watch my videos. I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you, I appreciate you, and I love you all. I really hope you enjoyed this video. You may also like these. Don't forget to subscribe down below for more easy recipes, and I will see you in the next one.